All right, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at. Welcome to the Streamline Contract Reconciliation with a RevOps Agentic Workflow webinar. Okay. We'll be starting momentarily, but I want to give people a chance to kind of sign on, get everything, ready to go. Get a cup of coffee while we, get ready for our half-hour session here. And with that, while we wait for people to kind of sign on, I wanted to get into some of the housekeeping aspects. So if we can get the next slide, that'd be awesome. And by the way, my name's Jeffrey. I'll be hosting this along with my colleague, and I'll be doing the introductions momentarily. Now, housekeeping before we get started. For those aren't familiar, on the upper right-hand corner, we got a panel that includes the chat area where you can actually, if you can, please enter your name and tell us where you're from. That way we kind of know the reach of our webinar that's happening here. Okay. Also, take a moment, answer the poll. That will help us figure out what you all are interested in, and we can create more content that is actually targeting your needs. All right. Now, during the actual event, there'll be, we'll obviously get questions. We have the Q&A area where you can actually, type in a question. We can respond to it, and kind of keep on going from there. This is meant to be an educational series for you to kind of learn and pull out information that you need to make your agent building more efficient. Okay. Also, we have a docs area where we have reference documentation. One other thing, next week, since this is a reoccurring webinar that happens on Thursday, we have our LMS agentic workflow. That one's going to be talking about a agent that has been built for our learning management system that actually will help with grading of tests. It's actually very cool. I've seen it, and I think you guys will really enjoy that. So make sure you show up on Thursday next week, okay? With that, next slide. All right. For those, many of you are joining us again, and I thank you for that. For those who have missed an episode, all of them are available on demand, so you can just kind of go back and kind of watch them again. Also, if you want to go and check out our blogs, we kind of have blogs, talking about our sessions there too, with the on-demand link available there also. All right. Next slide. With that, let me kind of quickly go into our agenda. We have a poll that's currently open. Like I said, go in, answer that, help us out. Okay, so that way we can create more content for you. We're going to be going over the business case and the process. Why this thing was built, how it was done, what we were trying to solve. Also, as we go into it, kind of going over the blueprint, high level, the diagrams, how everything kind of interacts. That way you can get that 10,000-foot view and start diving down as we kind of peel that onion. Jordan's going to be giving us a demo of how the product actually works. So going into under the covers, seeing all the little bits and bytes on how everything is done. And of course, Q&A, final Q&A at the very end, all right? With that, let's kind of go into the introductions so you kind of know who we are. My name's Jeffrey Wong. I lead the technical product marketing over here at SnapLogic, and I'm happy to have my partner in crime, Jordan Millhausen. He's a solution engineer here at SnapLogic, and one of his big things is really explaining technology to people, helping to bridge that gap between the technical and the solutions, and kind of explaining how things are built, how you actually solve them, and how you get that business value out of it. And with that, Jordan, let me have you introduce yourself to our audience.
Yeah, no, Jeff summed it up very nicely. Great to be on this webinar today. Excited to show you guys, what we have with SnapLogic around agents, APIM, and just integration in general. So I come from a long background of integrations AI. I'm part of the AI COE team here at SnapLogic. So really pumped to show you guys what we have today. Thanks, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Jordan. With that, let me get the next slide, and then we can kind of go into the business case and the process. So, first off, Jordan, I want to understand from you, if you can kind of tell the audience, what was that problem that we're trying to solve? It's best
Sure.
coming from
Yeah.
you, since you're the creator of this thing.
Yeah, exactly. So across pretty much every business unit within an organization, there is one common problem that kind of surfaces itself, and that is taking unstructured data, so like your PDFs, images, facts, whatever it might be, and being able to turn that into usable structured data. So with SnapLogic, there's you can obviously integrate your systems and sources. So a lot of organizations have many ERP systems, CRMs, and the process that it takes to manually extract data from those unstructured data sources, again, as PDFs and things like that, and then manually enter those into your ERP systems, your CRMs, or whatever other systems that you need in order for your business to function. So like invoices, purchase orders, compliance documents, whatever it might be. That's a very manual process, and it still is, even though AI has been around not for too long. The last like year and a half, 2 years. It's just a big problem, and it takes up a lot of time for people manually to do that.
Yeah, I gotta say, what you just said, is near and dear to myself, because I've had some experience in the data extraction from documents, invoices, things like that, where people are, creating these document templates, trying to pull things out, and that was, before, AI was around. So obviously it's hard, but then what about that opportunity?
Yeah.
Why is what you built kind of like better because you've applied AI to this?
Sure. Yeah. So the opportunity is pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward. I think at this point, a lot of people understand the need to be able to automate the extraction of data. I think in the past there's been people have implemented things like RPA, but RPA is robotic process automation. So that's more so just mimicking human action on a something that's repeatable on like a singular screen. So what we're talking about here is automating the entire process from using multimodal capabilities to extract data from those unstructured data sources, and then being able to use your orchestrating agent to coordinate the delivery of that data to different systems. So like again, your ERPs, your CRMs, all automatically, all without having to lift a finger. And that's what we're going to kind of dive in today. And so the idea is like, how can we automate all of this entire process? Because we want to take all of these man hours that are being focused on just very mundane, repeatable tasks, and how can we free up those people's times, save organizations money, and just kind of increase efficiency, if you will.
I think that's a really good explanation on it. It's about time, energy, resources. Our teams aren't getting any bigger, and we have to figure out how, work smarter, not harder. And AI helps us do that. Apply our, creativity, our knowledge, our human aspects into our work. So, what is that actual solution that you kind of, built?
Right. So I guess I kind of started, diving into it a little bit there in the opportunity. But basically, the solution is we're going to use SnapLogic to, as most people know, integrate all of our different system sources. Whether that's ingesting documents from, a box drive, a Google Drive, maybe an email, or maybe just a manual upload, and then seeing how we can orchestrate that within SnapLogic to carry out that automated task to take that data and move it into your endpoints. Um, so that's essentially the solution. That's what we're going to dive in here today and kind of see how that actually looks under the covers.
All right. So, if you can actually, kind of start diving into the covers, that'd be awesome.
Let's do it. All right. So before I dive, I keep saying dive. Before we get into the solution, I want to kind of, as Jeff mentioned before, give a kind of 10,000-foot view, see exactly what we're doing, the process that we're going to be taking a look at, just so we can frame, we can help you guys frame how you're going to start looking at these problems and how you can start architecting solutions just like this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a file ingestion. Again, as I mentioned, your file ingestion using SnapLogic, we can connect to anything, your box, Google Drives. We can have an automated email puller. It can be from a different source system like a S3 bucket or, anything that's on Azure Blob, things like that. We can ingest anything. And so for the purposes of this demo, it's going to be a PDF that I'm going to be manually uploading. And then from there, the PDF is going to hit our RevOps agent orchestrator. So it's going to be the brain of the operations. And then from there, we have our tool calling. So the RevOps agent has access to 3 tools. We're going to be parsing data. We're going to be taking the data that we parsed. We're going to be using the SFDC, which is a Salesforce Op ID tool that's going to be taking the name that we parsed from the PDF. It's going to be able to then search and create its own SOQL query to search within Salesforce to find the Op ID. And then we're going to be able to update Salesforce with the 3rd tool, given that opportunity ID that we found. And this is all going to be automatic in the background, and you don't have to lift a finger. And ultimately updating Salesforce. Cool. All right. Moving on. Let's get to building. So we're going to be looking at 4 different tabs here. I'm going to just breeze through them real quick just so we can get a high level view. So I'm going to be uploading our PDF that looks like this. It's just a mock purchase order. This is just for demo purposes, McFly Enterprises, if we have any Back to the Future fans here. Standard purchase order, unstructured data. Again, this could be an image, this could be a fax, this could be anything. The multimodal capabilities that we have in SnapLogic allows to analyze and take in any unstructured data type. So first we upload into here, and then in the background. So let me just actually get this process kicked off. So going to upload the document. And then we're going to hit this reconcile Salesforce to kick it off. And then what's going to happen is if we go into Salesforce, we can see this payment status and payment details are currently blank. Once this agent is finished running, those 2 fields are going to be updated. So once that runs, we're going to take a look and we can see the actual process that is actually happening within the background. So this is happening live. So this is going to take a few seconds. I think it takes about less than 20 seconds. So it's going through the thinking process. So as I mentioned before, it's doing 3 things right now. It's taking that PDF, it's uploading it, and it's parsing that data with the first tool to parse the, it's called auto IDP. Then it's taking that and it's uploading it or finding the op ID. And then from there, it's taking that op ID and updating Salesforce. And so you can see the agent results. I just have this user interface kicking back the agent thought process. So we can see summary of actions completed, successfully processed the document ID, located the corresponding Salesforce opportunity right here, and then it updated Salesforce with the information, and then all operations completed successfully. So if we go into here, Salesforce, we do a little refresh, go into details, and we can find that those 2 sources, or there's 2 fields that I had mentioned are updated. Now this is a, obviously a very simplified demo that kind of showcases what you can do. Again, you can connect to any ERP system, SAP, you can update SAP, create, NetSuite tickets. You can obviously, as we just demonstrated, update Salesforce opportunities. And so from there, let's dive into SnapLogic and see kind of at a high level how this was done. So if we take a look at the pipeline, if you've been on any of the other Agent Builder series so far, this looks very familiar. If you haven't, all we're looking at here is just a data pipeline where when we uploaded that document into that user interface, it entered into this left-hand side, what we call the record replay. And so again, we could have an email puller connected here. This could be a Google Drive connection. It doesn't matter. For the purposes of this, again, I'm just simulating with the manual upload. And then from there, these next 1, 2, 3, 4 snaps, all we're doing here is prepping our prompt for our agent. So I think, again, if you've been on these Agent Builder series before, you guys are familiar with the Prompt Composer. So the Prompt Composer is a pretty powerful tool. I'm not going to dive into this, but essentially this is just where we are giving our agent the instructions in order to carry out its tasks. So I like to structure my prompts with title, a brief summary of what it's going to do, the available tools, describe the tools, and then the workflow instructions. And then from there, we hit our user prompt. Since this is going to be a very static request, this is just going to be what we're passing, which is the document ID, which is what the agent needs. Typically, if you have more of a dynamic user request, like a chatbot, you might be updating that user prompt. But for now, we just have those separated just for organization and simplicity purposes. And then from there, this is what I kind of want to highlight. The APIM tools. So this is where we're actually going to be defining the tools that the agent has access to. And so what we're doing here is we're using the APIM functionality within SnapLogic to create and wrap to create a service that wraps our tools within standard governance that you want to create. And so if you're not familiar, SnapLogic has its own homegrown APIM solution, and I'm going to flash that real quick. We're not going to dive into that in depth, but I just want to show that the different policies that you can create within the APIM within SnapLogic that you can actually use for governance of your tools, so that if you have different users, whether they're users or an admin or different, you want to have different access controls, you can set that up within SnapLogic using APIM. So things like your validates and your authenticates, like your APIM API key authenticator, your JWT tokens, OAuth, you can set that all up within SnapLogic. And that's all we've done here is we've set up that service within our APIM, and we're just using that URL here. And then from there, this last snap is just we're just restructuring so that the API can properly call the LLM. And that's all we're doing within this snap here is the tool calling. And so once that entire process happens, this entire tool calling snap, what we just saw happen with the parsing the PDF, finding the op ID, and then updating Salesforce all happens within that snap. And then when it's completed, everything to the right over here are just essentially one, the visualize snap, and then two, we're putting this into a database just for further logging, further analysis. And then this payload prep down here, all we're doing is now we can send this to other systems. So if you want to communicate from agent to agent or communicate with MCP servers, you can have this agent actually communicate with other integrations as well. And so the last thing I'm going to kind of dive into here is the agent visualizer. So this is one of a cool hack or a cool capability within SnapLogic platform. It allows us to see how our agent carried out its tasks. We can see the thinking process from a very structured point of view, because if you're coming into building agents, it's a very complex process, and it's it can be very overwhelming and kind of hard to understand. And this snap allows you to kind of visualize that. So this is our agent. It's just the name of the pipeline is just agent, but if you call this obviously like RevOps agent, it would say that. We can see that there's 3 steps. So even if you have 3 tools, there could be more than 3 steps. This one has 3 steps because there was no errors. So typically if you have an error within your agent, within one of the tools, it will actually retry the tool. And so here we didn't have any errors. So we have 3 steps, 3 tools, 3 steps. It was carried out pretty flawlessly. So we can click from step to step and we can see exactly what's happening. So we can see the reasoning. So step 1, the reasoning, I'll process this document and update Salesforce accordingly. First, let's process the document using the IDP tool, gave the parameters that we defined within the actual tool, and then it gave the results, and that was sent back to the agent. Now the main agent, the orchestrating agent, has access to this data, and it can see, okay, let's find the name of this company, and then let's go to step 2. So now that I have the company name, McFly Enterprises, we can find the corresponding opportunity in Salesforce. And so I didn't prompt it to create this SOQL query. I didn't say use body, use object type, where clause. This is just a definition of the tool. And then the agent is smart enough to introspect and see exactly what parameters that it needs to create. And so this is an SOQL query that the agent created entirely on its own. And then from there, we can see that we found the op ID. And then for step number 3, the final step, we can see that it updates Salesforce given that op ID and given the payment details and the payment status. And then from there, we can see the final agent output. And this is exactly what we saw on that front end user interface. And this completes the action. So again, as a quick recap, just the benefits and what we did within here is we took unstructured data, sent it to our agent, took that unstructured data, created structured JSON data, found the op ID, updated Salesforce all automatically while using APIM to wrap and govern the tools for a more secure and enterprise grade agentic workflow. And so ultimately, kind of removing myself from the technology, from the business perspective, what this process helps solve, and I think it's pretty apparent at this point, is the manual hours that it takes to parse data, update data. It's many, many, many hours. Depending on the size of the company, it can be whole teams worth of people are dedicated to just parsing data. So this solves for that. And that concludes the demo. So going to pass it back over to Jeff. I know we're probably going to have some questions coming in soon.
Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
Jordan, if you can actually go back to the demo,
sure,
I want to kind of go back to Agent Visualizer for a second. I want to kind of
sure.
call something out there, right? So you see the 3 steps. Basically, if I read this correctly, the agent is processing. It's going to IDP post, and
Mhm.
then it does whatever it does. Then it goes to SFDC read post, and then it does whatever it needs to do, and then it goes to SFDC write post. Correct?
Correct.
Now, if it actually if you had a step where it was actually thinking and iterating multiple times, I could potentially see multiple calls to that, I'll call it step or routine, right?
Yep. Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about with the errors. Typically, it's only going to agents are only going to sort of call tools and add more steps and iterate over tools if there's an error that is seen for the most part. So that's sort of what I was referring to when I mentioned, there could be more steps than tools, and typically it's going to be because there's an error in one of the tools and it's not getting the correct data that it needs.
Okay, all right. And just to make it clear for everybody, you did not sequence any of this stuff. It's actually doing it on its own, right?
Exactly. Yep. So you just prompt the agent, you give it the access to the tools, you explain what the tools are, and then you give it workflow instructions. And you can be as vague or as specific as you want. Obviously, we recommend being a little bit more specific, and then iterate because creating agents is an iterative process. You want to, create your prompt, see the output, update, see the output, and that's kind of how you iterate and fine tune, if you will, your agent.
Exactly. And one of the things I want to kind of call out for people also is, Agent Visualizer, it actually helps bring that level of trust for the developer or agent builder in terms of what's actually going on. You get to graphically see that, visually see it. It's going here, it's going there, and what is it really doing? Because you have the request information, you have the reasoning information, you have that action information, all there available to you. Now, from there, you also get that validation in terms of what happens. So, Join, you were building before we actually did Agent Visualizer also. How was it then? Was it more difficult?
Uh, it, y- yes, it was more difficult in the sense that it was kind of harder to explain to other people how your agent is thinking. Because obviously, when you're in the thick of building this agent, you kind of become encompassed with it, and you understand the ins and outs. But usually, or I guess when you're early on and just starting your creating agents, and you're able to use a tool like this. It just drastically helps improve your understanding of how the agent thinks and works. So it's kind of a twofold thing. If you're new to agents, it helps you learn, but also as you get more comfortable with it, it helps you show other people how your agent works as well. It just helps improve that learning process.
All right, that makes sense. A couple of questions have been kind of coming in also. Where is that agent visualizer and what snap pack is it actually in? Do you actually have the ability to kind of show us where that is firsthand? I'm
Yeah.
putting you
So
on the spot.
I think I'm not okay. So it's a part of the agent creator experimental beta. So I mean, it's a relatively new snap. I think it's a few months, 3 months old. So it's in that snap pack.
Okay, all right. And then the thing is, after you're done and you're pushing this thing to prod, are you going to remove the agent visualizer snap, or are you just going to kind of leave it there?
That depends on your preference of your CI/CD process. You can leave it out. You can keep it in. It's more of a visualization tool. I would probably say best practice to just leave it in your dev, and then take it out when you move to prod. Because if you're in prod, there's probably um, you know little reason to keep that visualizer in there because obviously you should have checked if the agent is working functionally or properly before promoting to production. But I think it's just a personal preference. I don't think there's any security risks with that. But yeah, I'd probably just recommend keeping it within dev.
Okay, all right. And to kind of reiterate on that, since you brought up the security aspect, SnapLogic, we do not keep any runtime data in any of our logs and such. So there is no, we don't see what's going through it. Um, so you don't have to worry about that. Also, Agent Visualizer is a tool, during your development process. Correct, Joanne? It's currently not doing, production runs. That is on the roadmap because we want to make sure that we address any type of, data concerns that customers have. But that doesn't mean you can't get similar functionality and logging of what's happening, because we have all those hooks available into our product where you can actually, build something similar to Agent Visualizer and output that into your own, repo for, runs.
Yeah, that's kind of
Um,
what's happening here with the MongoDB. So all we're doing here is gathering the messages. So we're piping the messages into this database. So you can actually create custom tooling too. If you don't want to use the visualizer and you don't want it in there, you can actually the data that you save within your MongoDB. You can create custom tooling, and we actually had a custom solution for exactly the agent visualizer that one of my colleagues built before the agent visualizer was a thing. So, SnapLogic, we don't save or process your data in the control plane. But we do create a lot of metadata. So everything you see here that we're building is just instructions, and we're creating metadata, and you can save that metadata, and it's very useful for creating custom tooling or analysis, error handling, things like that.
okay. All right, so well, obviously in the Q&A session of the presentation, actually, why don't we kind of flip back to our slides, because I do
Yeah.
want to do a quick summary of what we kind of saw. Anything else you kind of want to mention first,
No, I
Joanne?
saw there's a few more questions that in the chat. I don't know if we want to answer these right now or just kind of wrap and then get to the Q&A, or
Yeah,
what do you think?
let me quickly do a quick summary of what people have saw, and then we can kind of go back to Q&A.
Okay, cool.
All right. So, with respect to, what we kind of saw, we saw how agents, are triggered. We saw the flexibility of the interface, and agents in terms of how you kind of build them. And, this is kind of how, you kind of see from all the different webinars that we kind of present. Some of them can be automated. Some of them can be user invoked. Some of them are invoked via some data being, available. Okay. So you have that flexibility on how you build your agents. Also, you saw Prompt Composer, how we're able to actually streamline and make prompt building very straightforward. Because you see the data, you see the prompts, you can actually run those iterations through and see what those responses are, so you can kind of refine fairly quickly. Okay. Also, Agent Visualizer, this is your first time seeing it in this series. Where you can actually see that logic, that flow, what the agent is doing, what steps is it performing, what tools is it calling, and seeing the rationale, the data going back and forth, and the responses. Okay, and of course, all this is done with our drag and drop interface, where you can easily kind of see the flow of your agent. You can actually see all your tools, see all your pipelines and everything, and make sure you have access to that enterprise data that your agents are needing, and building out that value of an agentic workflow or an agent. Okay, so that's a little bit of a summary, but keep the questions coming. We have about a minute left. I do want to answer, get one more question, and there was one about LLMs. All the kind of different LLMs produce different results when you prompt it. Um, you know, how does that kind of change, or how do you end up managing something like that?
Yeah, right. So I think that you're looking at Juan's question. So yeah, I mean, the LLM is going to provide different, I guess, wording each time, if you will. It it comes down to sort of how you prompt. If you wanted to have specific wording and how it responds, you could put examples. But if you are following best practices in terms of like, here's the tools, here's the workflow, even if you're very vague, it's going to always carry out that workflow. Obviously, if you've tested everything, the tools are properly functioning and things like that, that won't vary. The actual like process won't vary. It's more so just how the agent responds in terms of you know um, like I completed this task, or they might say this task is done, or something like that. The wording might change because it is an LLM and it's coming up with like a different response every time, but it is following a defined process, so that shouldn't change.
Okay, that makes sense. And also, there's a question about getting a copy of the pipelines from these webinars. I'll go ahead and answer that one. Reach out to your customer success manager, and they'll end up, getting you kind of what you need. Okay. Let's see. And I'm just scrolling through I think that was it for the questions. If we can kind of go over the next slide, because we are about at the end of this session. Next slide, Joanne, please. Thank you. And with that, also, we have next week's, session, the Learning Management System Agentic Workflow. Definitely come and take a look at that. Also, on October 7th, we have a MCP Model Context Protocol, okay, powered integration webinar that's happening. Sign up for that. The links are in the Docs tab, in the upper right-hand corner. And also, we didn't get a chance to talk about the Agent Creator Bootcamp, but that is a hands-on event where you actually will go and build an agent. It's a great way for people to actually get hands-on, build an agent, build something that you can kind of use, right out of the event. Okay, definitely encourage you all to check out the links in the docs, and also if you go to our resource page on our website, you can kind of see all the other events that are happening there. If there's something that you are actually looking for you don't currently see there, feel free to reach out to your customer success manager and let them know too. With that, wanted to say thank you.
Yep. Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thanks. See you later.
See ya. Bye.